Welcome to Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy. And this is where characters gather. It is a warm and steamy Monday here in Texas. It's supposed to be 90-something today and then drop to the high 50s by Thursday. It's spring. Our weather's a little all over the place. But I can't complain. My husband cut me my first rose of the year. Hi, Fireball. You come to say hi? Well, good girl. This Fireball. She is a 6-year-old fox red Labrador. My husband cut me my first rose of the year this weekend, so I'm very happy. Last week was a very busy week around the homestead. We are getting all of the windows in the house replaced. Sometime in June, they're on special order, so I'm very much looking forward to that. Yes, I love you too. No, go lay down. So last week was a very good reading week. I read 6 books last week. I DNF'd 1 book. I thought about DNFing another. I haven't yet decided. It's kind of sitting there on the fence going, nah. So I'm going to leave that one for now. I will decide this week and then talk about it next week's wrap up. So the book I DNF'd this week is Haunted Hibiscus by Laura Childs. I want to say this is number 27 or 29 in the series. Maybe it's not that far. I'll put the number right below. Why did I DNF it? Because the murder happened within the first 9 pages. And page 9 was, a little short paragraph. So we'll say the first 8 pages. It's one of my biggest gripes in the universe. It really is. There's no backstory for the murder victim. You barely get introduced to the atmosphere and the characters and the setting. And then wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. There's a dead body. And I don't have the patience for it anymore. I don't have the desire to spend my time reading it. It was a book chosen because it had flowers on the cover to meet my 2023 reading goals, which I will link that video in the description below. And I have plenty of books on the cover. I don't need to torture myself with this particular book on the cover. Just it wasn't worth my time. Everything else this week was on my Kindle. First up, the arcs. First arc was Tracking the Tiny Target by Connie Queen. This was a love-inspired suspense. They are very short. I gave it 2 stars. I know I have outgrown this type of fiction, and I conveyed that to the publishers for all the other arcs I had in the love-inspired category this week as well. It wasn't the fact that it was poorly written or I've aged beyond the books. Best way to put it. It reminds me of 80s Harlequin romances, although this was completely clean. Where love is instantaneous, there's no character depth, there's no story depth, and this was just 100% that. After 48 hours of high stress trying to track down a single mother's child who's been kidnapped by persons unknown, although she believes it's her ex-husband, she and the deputy she's running around with doing incredibly silly things, all in the name of retrieving her child, declare their love for each other and are married within 6 months. I'm sorry. What? Look, I believe in love at first sight. I have no choice. I fell in love with my husband at first sight. However, I didn't tell him that the first time I saw him. I didn't tell him that 48 hours. Yeah. It was frustrating. These were very cardboard characters in a very high stress, tense situation, and the woman kept throwing herself in the path of danger and not telling anyone, and he kept riding to her rescue, most of the time by happenstance or luck. It wasn't enjoyable. I know to now stay away. Second arc of the week was In the Shadow of the River by Anne H. Gabhart. This is a historical fiction. It's a little bit of romance. It's a little bit of a mystery, but it's mostly just historical fiction with a very light dusting of faith sprinkled throughout. I wouldn't classify this necessarily as Christian historical fiction, even though the author mostly writes Christian fiction. This tells a story of JC, who has to solve the mystery of her parentage and why her mother died, and who the man JC shot when she was 5 was, and what he wanted with her. This was a beautiful read. I read this in essence in one day. Excuse the bird, he's a little mouthy this morning and he doesn't want me to touch him. The Mississippi River is that environmental side character that without this book wouldn't work. So JC lives on a showboat. Her grandfather and the showboat actors have all raised her. And the boat stops in little towns along the Mississippi River. And I don't know why more authors don't use this specific time period of history and the river and the showboats and the steamboats and as a setting more often. If you're looking for a cinematic reference, Maverick, starring Mel Gibson, takes place on a steamboat on the Mississippi River. It gives you the general look and feel, not necessarily the atmosphere of a showboat versus a steamboat, but it does give you that aesthetic. This was an excellent read. I enjoyed JC's story. I enjoyed all of the side characters. I enjoyed the mystery. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It is a beautifully written book, and the cover is just perfect. I am looking forward to reading more from this author. The next book I read was on Kindle Unlimited. It was Mind Games by Nacy Mehl. And the only reason I know about this author is because of Oceana over at Oceana. Gotta read them all. I will link her channel down below. This is Christian suspense. I devoured this book. I read this in one day. I loved everything about it. It tells the story of Kaylee Quinn, who is an FBI profiler who is relocated from DC to St. Louis. Relocated, wrong word. Let's use exiled. That's a better choice. Exiled to St. Louis when a story is published in the national papers and the local DC papers about Kaylee's father, who was a well-known serial killer, and the FBI doesn't like the publicity, so they exile her to St. Louis. Her boss in St. Louis thinks she's great. She's a little unorthodox in her methodology, but she gets results, which is really all that counts. And then one day, the reporter who outed her in DC shows up at the FBI office in St. Louis saying, I was mailed this threat. I think it's real. I'm going to show it to you. And it's this very beautifully written poem, beautifully written by the author, not necessarily by the serial killer. Beautifully written poem that threatens a killing spree with Kaylee being the final victim. And she's going to choose to kill herself. And she's like, that's just nonsense, when her boss shows her the note. Nonetheless, they all decide to take it seriously. And what follows is the exploration of who in Kaylee's life wants her dead and why. And why are they killing other people to get to Kaylee? Her brother, her therapist, the list of suspects is too long to begin with. This was such an enjoyable read. I loved every single moment of this. I cannot wait to read the other 2 books in the series. I cannot wait to read more of her back catalog. This is Christian suspense that has faith as a natural, gentle, everyday component of life. You know, sending up a sudden prayer to God because you need help, or you need just, a little bit of comfort that comes when you talk to God. It's naturally woven into the book. It isn't preachy. It isn't in your face. It's just, I think you could read this book, Christian or not, and not be offended by the content of the faith in the book. Personal opinion. And then I started my spring into Christian fiction reading. And first up, I read the Brick House Cafe novella by Carla Loreno, which is the novella to the... Oh, Lord, I can't remember the name of the book. I will put a copy of it right here, which releases in the middle of April. I have it on pre-order. I loved this book. Again, it was only 166 pages. Needless to say, I read it in one day. I loved this book. It isn't necessarily in-your-face Christian fiction. There are references to God, but they are very muted and natural in the story. And it tells the story of... Oh, Lord, I've forgotten her name. I've forgotten their names. Oh, what are their names? I will put them right here. This is what happens when you're over 50 and you're trying to remember something you read days ago. So, anyway, she's on assignment to go write a story in this town in southern Colorado. And her GPS magically malfunctions and sends her to Haven, which is the town in which the cafe is located. And the residents of Haven have a saying, Haven gets what Haven wants. It turns out what Haven wants is her to write a story about Haven. So she ends up at the Brick House Cafe, which is the only place that is open. She goes to leave. Her car won't start. She ends up having to stay in town. And she hears the amazing history of the town. And she knows this is a story she's meant to write. And she can't find verifiable sources for the story. Her car gets fixed. She leaves and she goes to the town where she's supposed to write the story about. So she submits both stories to her editor. And a couple months later, lo and behold, they have printed the story about Haven. And this is just a magical, enjoyable read. I loved every single word of this story. It was just the right length. It told just the right thing. I cannot wait to hear more about them. I cannot wait to hear more about the town. And now I am so looking forward to Oath of Brotherhood, which is my other Carla Lorena book on my Spring Into Christian Fiction list. I'm on pins and needles with joy about that. It was an easy 5 stars. Go pick it up. If you sign up on her website, she will, I'm not sure if this is true, it was when I did it a couple weeks ago, she sends you the Brick House Cafe story for free. It is totally worth it. Next up, I finished Cairo Curse by Pepper Basham. This was just awesome. What did I expect? Wait, no, that's exactly what I expected. It was a Freddie and Grace book. And Grace, as usual, is Grace. She gets into silly situations. She finds herself, tripping over dead bodies. And in this case, quite literally, because she's in Egypt and she's touring pyramids and tombs and crawling around. This is so much fun. There's the faith content you would expect in a Pepper Basham book. It is the gentle, everyday, little expressions of faith that those of us who believe routinely express. And this was so much fun. It completely sets up book number 3, which I know she just finished writing and is coming out next year, called The Juliet Code. I am on pins and needles for that book. I am so looking forward to it. If you have not started the Grace and Frederick series by Pepper Basham, the first book is The Mistletoe Countess. The second book is The Cairo Curse. Do yourself a favor. Go pick them up. Ebook, used bookstore, Christian bookstore, Amazon, wherever you can find them. They are worth it. They are enjoyable. Yes, the Mistletoe Countess takes place during Christmas, but don't let that deter you. It is not a Christmassy book. It's set at Christmas, but it's not a Christmassy book. Cairo Curse was an easy 5-star book for me. I loved every word of it. So what am I going to read? I'm currently reading Authentically Izzy by Pepper Basham. I can already tell you this is a 5-star book. I have Positively Penelope on ARC. Hello, Kahlua. Hello, Kahlua. Which I will probably pick up as soon as I finish Izzy, because I just have to know. I know the Luke book is next, which, I'm going to have to wait for, and it will be a painful wait, but that's okay. I then need to decide if I'm going to DNF the book I'm thinking about DNFing. I'm not going to tell you which one until I decide. Somehow, when I was searching for Catholic fiction to put on my Spring of Christian Fiction list, this book was listed as Catholic fiction. It is not Catholic fiction. This is clearly a Protestant book, which is fine. That is not the issue I'm having with the book, but it is there. So we will see. I am also probably going to pick up a Karen Kingsbury book off of my Spring into Christian Fiction list and read another NetGalley arc. I'm trying to get my NetGalley list down. Don't know what yet. We'll see what I'm in the mood for. What are you reading this week? And what are you looking forward to reading this week? Please leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.